Hey Jay,
Hey.
I have to start, in case you're watching us, that we accidentally
Oh,
wore kind of the same sweater.
yeah, we're matching.
Yeah, we
It's
don't,
not the same sweater. It's the same-ish color.
and it's the same pattern, but yours is a cardigan and mine's a turtleneck.
Perfect.
So if you have intuitive friends, this kind of thing happens a lot. Okay, so we're going to talk about clairvoyance today.
Yes.
I have to say right here at the top of the episode, this is perfect for you if you are super clairvoyant, but maybe even more perfect for you if you aren't and you want to work on that.
Yes.
So I'm going to get into this more as the episode goes on, but when you're working on your clairs, you don't want to just work on your top two.
Right.
In fact, you want to understand them.
Uh-huh.
You want to be really aware of them.
Right.
But you also need to work on the ones that aren't your strongest.
Correct.
Because that actually strengthens all of your intuition and all of them.
Right.
So if you're coming into this and you just want to learn a little bit more about it, perfect. If you're like, oh, I am clairvoyant, let me sort of strengthen those skills, also perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe even the most perfect if you're like, I'm actually not super clairvoyant.
Same.
That's going to help.
Right.
Okay.
Also, if all you know about intuition is like, I see dead people.
Yeah.
Which is clairvoyance.
Yes.
Some of clairvoyance.
Yes.
If that's all you know,
uh-huh,
then like start here.
Yes.
And then we'll keep going with all the other ones, and you can see where what fits you.
We got asked by the listeners to break down the clairs more.
Right, because we have a whole episode on the clairs.
We do. Go listen to it. It's great. But
it was a while ago.
It was a while ago. So we're updating things here. But also, when I was like, which one do we start with?
Yeah.
It has to be clairvoyance because it's the most well known.
Yep.
But it's also the most misrepresented.
Agree. Well, that's what you see in media.
Yes, and it sort of acts like the only way to be intuitive is to be clairvoyant.
Exactly.
And that is far, far from true.
Exactly.
It's just what you see represented, like you said, in the media the most.
Right, and if you're not clairvoyant, then you think, oh, I'm not intuitive.
Right.
Because I don't see dead people, so I must not be intuitive.
Exactly. And when Jamie says you're not clairvoyant, she means it's not one of your top two most developed, because everybody has all the clairs.
Exactly.
Just like we say, like everyone experiences all the human desires and the universal fears. It's just you have the top two. And I try when I talk about the clairs to use the word developed more than like strongest, or like, because it's just the ones that you work on the most.
Right.
Because there might be one of us, the one not wearing the turtleneck, who has a incredibly developed clair as a result of maybe some trauma.
Yes. Why
you chose to put most all of the eggs in that basket. It might not have been your sort of strongest one you were born with, but somewhere along the line, shit happens in life and we sort of overdevelop ones and underdevelop others. So I just want you to have that in your mind when you're going into this.
Yeah,
Does
definitely.
that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So before we get any further into clairvoyance, I'm just going to recap what the clairs are.
Perfect.
So clair just means clear.
Right.
Okay. So it's clear. Clairvoyance is clear seeing. So these are referred to as the psychic senses. You and I both hate the term psychic.
Yeah, it's been sort of ruined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People ruined it.
Happens.
You know, it's why we can't have nice things. Some people.
Right.
So I don't love that, but I sort of think of them as the inner senses.
Yes.
So they're your intuitive senses. They're the sort of medium in which your intuition is taking in information and sometimes even outputting information.
Yes.
Okay. So that's how, if you think of it that way, I think it helps. So there's clairvoyance, which is psychic seeing or clear seeing. Clairaudience, which is hearing. Claircognizance is knowing. Clairsentience is feeling. Clairtangency is touch. Clairalience is smell. And clairgustance is taste.
Yes.
Now, a big one that I see like happening a lot more in the last few years is people referring to clairempathy.
Yes.
Okay, so that's when they separate clairsentience into kind of two.
Yep.
So that would be emotional feeling. So like, it would be emotional feeling, and then clairsentience would be physical feeling.
Gotcha.
So just to give you a quick example, if you were near someone and you were tapping into them intuitively and you felt how they were feeling, that would be clairempathy.
Right.
If
you're feeling emotionally.
Yes. If you're near someone and you feel pain in your knee that's
like,
their pain in their knee.
Right.
That in this definition would be considered clairsentience.
Exactly.
Now, sometimes the way that, I always learned them was clairsentience represented both of those things. But again, I just want you to have all the information. Use whatever works for you. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, I could see how if you only really experience one of those two, how you would want to differentiate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Okay.
So like I said before, everyone has all of them, but most people have a top two.
Correct.
And if you're like, Heather, why is it when it comes to intuition always top two?
Yes.
I can only give you my most educated guess to that. And that I think the way that your intuition works is to have like one main sort of route it takes and then a route that supports that.
Yep.
Okay. So you see that with the universal desires.
Yep.
And that's why sometimes when one of your tops change, the other one sort of shifts.
Yep.
It's sort of like a main character and a supporting character here. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's also like very patriarchal to say that you only have one of something.
Yeah.
Like this is the one thing you're good at and that's all you've got. Like that's not intuition.
No, it's not. Not at all. It's everything is represented in some sort of a balance somewhere in your system. That's much more intuitive. But when you sort of shift into ego stuff, you'll see that there's more of like a top one.
Yeah.
So again, that's because that's a little bit more of a masculine patriarchal concept, which exists in you, right? The patriarchal stuff wouldn't be bad if it was balanced by matriarchal stuff.
Exactly.
So when we talk about the patriarchy and things like that, we're talking about bringing back balance, right? So it's the out of balance stuff that doesn't work. Sorry, that's a tangent, but I just feel like
I think that makes a lot of sense.
I also think if you look at your clairs as the most developed, but you also think of like them as your default clairs.
Yep.
It's sort of just naturally in your system what happens because again, you're not really trying. You can try. You can try to use clairvoyance or clairgustance. I want to really taste something, psychically to get information. Absolutely, you can try to do that. I recommend that you do try to do that. We're going to talk about that. But there are two defaults that just naturally happen in your system without you having to use your brain. It's just how intuition works. It comes in without thought, right?
Yep.
It's just the natural ways that happens for you. If you're wondering what your top two are, we get asked this all the time, Jamie.
Yeah,
all the time.
Yeah.
There's some fun ways to sort of look at that. And, I'll get into it more when we start looking at clairvoyance. But your learning style is the biggest clue because it's, believe it or not, when you're learning, yes, you are taking information in through your brain. Right. But you're also taking it in through your senses.
So you're processing it.
Yes. So it's both intuitive and ego when you're learning. Both of those are, everything is both, but both of those systems are very activated when you're doing that. So it's really like going, what is my sort of default learning style here? Is it visual learning? Is it like you have to hear it? Or is it you have to do it? And that's going to give you a huge clue into what your top clair is. One of your top two anyways. I'm a visual learner. I have to see it. So it's not surprising that clairvoyance is my top. Right. Okay. So it's not that I'm a visual learner and so that means my clairvoyance is the intuition that developed. It's that my default is clairvoyance. So visual learning works really well for my system because it's a natural way that my system takes in information.
Yeah, it's easier for you.
Yes. Right. So whatever your top is, you just substitute that same sentence in, and that's the case. Yep. Okay. Again, you want to work on all of your clairs, not just your top ones. And I have to give you a little bit of a Bumpa lesson. Okay. So Bumpa is my father. Jamie calls him Bumpa because my kids call him Bumpa.
I just take over.
Yeah. So he's Bumpa to everybody now in the world, I think.
Yeah.
So when I was growing up, he was always one of my sports coaches.
Yes.
All right. So one of the things that he would say all the time, like if I was playing softball or golf or whatever, it would be, people like to work on the skill that they're best at. So for me, when it came to softball, I was really good at throwing the ball. I was very accurate. Had a good throw, right?
Right.
So what do you think I wanted to do all the time?
You wanted to throw the ball.
I wanted to do that.
Right.
And he would always say,
Nope.
no, that's a skill that you already have. If you
Right.
work on the skills that are a little bit harder for you,
Right.
then you strengthen all of your skills.
And you're
But
a
if
better
you
player.
only work on the thing you're really good at, you only strengthen that.
That's a great point, Bumpa.
So think of Bumpa
Yep.
when you're doing, and this goes for like dance. I mean, it's not just a sports reference. I know Jamie loves a good sports reference.
Yeah, I'm an athlete.
Yeah. So whatever, like this doesn't just work in intuition. It really is a great concept for anywhere.
Absolutely.
And we tend to because we feel a little insecure when we're doing the thing that we're not great at, we tend to not spend a lot of time doing it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just a good reminder.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. So your ego is also very connected to your top two.
Okay.
All right. So your top two clairs. So for me, it's clairvoyance and claircognizance. For you, it's claircognizance and clairvoyance in the other way, would you say?
Yeah.
I feel like your number two changes sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you're going to get to like the clues you can pick up. Like sometimes I hear myself. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's between clairaudient and clairvoyance. And it really does shift between the two.
Yes. So for me, those two, so clairvoyance and claircognizance, have a lot of ego shit connected to them when I use them, because the higher developed your intuition is in an area, the higher developed your ego is. They slide together.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So you can't escape your ego by using your top clair. In fact, your ego is going to be the loudest using that one.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So a lovely workaround to
That's a great point.
Is to not use your top two, or to go to some that aren't your top two to reinforce or to check in about something, because your ego is not going to be as loud.
That's a really great point.
So I'm going to tell you where I use this.
Okay.
Okay. And this is when it comes to eating and food.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
If I ask myself the question, what do I want to eat? Unfortunately, what happens after I ask that question is a little bit of an ego yuckiness. Now I've healed enough of it to sit through it and move through it and understand that it's not real, that, carbs are in fact not my enemy.
They are
and,
not.
all the things that come up, right? Like I should only want celery or something.
Yeah.
I let those voices come up and then move on.
Right.
Okay. But sometimes those voices are just very loud on a certain day.
Yeah.
And so if I was to try to picture what I wanted to eat, whatever I pictured is going to come with my ego really being judgmental and shame-based about the thing I've chosen.
Great point.
Okay. But if I don't want to sort of activate the ego as loudly, I'm going to use clairgustance. So I'm going to stop for a second and just see what I can taste in my mouth. What food could I taste that would be great to taste right now? And then, okay, it's not like my ego's crickets when I use it, but it's not as connected to it.
Right.
So it's a great little workaround.
I love that.
Okay. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't have to be that you're just conjuring the dead with these. You use your intuition constantly during the day.
I know.
Use it to conjure the dead.
I know.
Love. Okay.
I think that's where people start though.
Yeah, and that's fine. Start there. Do what you want. But it's honestly more impactful and helpful to you to use it for everyday things. And if you're using it in your everyday life, when you go to use it for something bigger like that and more challenging to your intuition, it's more developed.
Yeah, and you're more in touch with it.
It's like your muscles are stronger and you're more in touch with it. Exactly. It just works in your system easier.
Yep.
Okay. So a little recap of why clairvoyance is so misunderstood.
Okay.
When the patriarchy decided that intuition was something they needed to villainize, they did it very intelligently, unfortunately.
Right.
Okay. So what they did was really try to misrepresent intuition as crystal ball predictions only.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So we know, if you've listened to other episodes, when you study the Romi people, who are mislabeled as gypsies, which is a derogatory term that we don't use anymore. If you've got a shirt that says it on it, throw it away, please. Right. We're not doing that anymore. But you take the Romi people and what they were sort of put through to trick the patriarchy. We're using crystal balls.
Yes.
Okay, if you look at history. So sort of the use of crystal balls was sort of like a joke that then became real based on what the patriarchy did.
Right.
So if you think about crystal balls, you're using clairvoyance, right? You're seeing something in the crystal ball. So it's sort of snowballed from there as like, that's the thing. You know, the term seer has been misrepresented as a clairvoyant, which is not what a seer is, by the way. We'll do an episode on that someday. I'm not going to get all the way into seers, but seers aren't necessarily, like, they do see things, but not in the way that a clairvoyant would see things. Those are different things.
Yes.
But everything sort of got bunched together. And the only way that you would like imagine talking to the dead, which is just you connecting with your spirit ancestors, which all cultures did, by the way.
Yep.
The Romans didn't like that. So that's why this happened, right? That it was misrepresented. It was like they were appearing in front of you. Like when you say, oh, I saw a ghost.
Yes.
It's implying that you saw it with your outside eyes and that's how your psychic senses work.
Yep.
And it's purposely misrepresented.
Exactly.
Because that's very rare. That does happen, but that's rare for that to happen. Does that make sense? So clairvoyance just became the representative of all the clairs.
It's also the easiest to show. It's easiest to depict, like in a movie, or it's easier to show like a ghost floating by than to like do some other sense.
Yeah, and you know, real clairvoyance happens like as if there's a movie screen inside your mind, like the same place that you imagine something or fantasize about something
or visualize
something is the exact same place that clairvoyance is taking place.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's really hard to show in a movie.
Right.
And it's not so cool. It's not like a great parlor trick, really. You know what I mean? But like if you suddenly see the person, like what was that Jennifer Love Hewitt show? It was like something about Ghost Whisperer or something.
Oh yeah, the Ghost Whisperer.
She like literally saw that, right? Like that makes a better TV show. I'm not mad about it.
Exactly.
It's just a misrepresentation.
Right.
And it's on purpose.
Yeah.
It's also the easiest to make you feel like you can't do.
Exactly.
Because very few people that I know can see stuff with their outside eyes.
Exactly.
So for me, it's like, because I am clairvoyant, it's mostly shadows that aren't there. It's like a corner of your eye shadow thing that you turn and there's nothing. Have I seen stuff with my outside eyes? Yes. A lot more when I was a little kid.
Right.
Not so much as an adult, but like it does happen, but it's rare. And so people who are like using that to like give readings, I would be very suspicious of that.
Agreed.
I've never really met someone who could do that.
No, I think the greatest mediums I've ever met or heard, they don't claim that.
Most of them are also clairaudient.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a different episode.
They're speaking to the dead because they're hearing them.
Exactly.
Okay. Anyways. Where your top two are, it's kind of evident because they bring you comfort. So I'm going to use an example for this. And if it's not one of your top twos, it tends to bring you like either alertness or anxiety.
Okay.
So if I told you right now that tonight when you go to bed, what I want you to do is do your routine. I want you to get all cozy, get into bed. I want you to close your eyes.
Yeah.
And I want you to start picturing yourself in a story. I want you to run it. I want you to imagine it as you fall asleep.
I love that game.
Okay. Well, it's because you're clairvoyant. For clairvoyant people, they're like, I already do that every night as I go to bed.
I do that.
Okay. That's what clairvoyant people do. For people who clairvoyance is not one of their top two most developed, that's them having anxiety.
Oh.
It sparks either like, I will never fall asleep if I do that. Some of the listeners are thinking that right now. Like, Heather, how dare you curse me to not fall asleep?
Right.
Or they start to get very anxious at the idea that their mind's going to be running like that. It's not comforting.
Gotcha.
Okay. So if you find comfort in what I just told you to do, or you already do it, chances are clairvoyance is one of your top two most developed. Okay. Because your top two most developed kind of default ones are comfortable to you.
Right.
It would be like if you were saying clairvoyance and it's not your top two, it would be like someone was like, okay, you can either go read and then comprehend what that means and tell the class, or you can go do these 20 math problems.
Right.
one of them's causing me anxiety, and one of them is like, oh yeah, that sounds great, can't wait.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So, and it's the math that causes me anxiety.
Yeah, exactly.
Which also clairvoyant people tend to struggle with math because we can't picture things inside our head. We have to write it down.
Yep.
It's a whole thing, but there's clues everywhere.
Yep.
Another of my favorite clues has to do with language, which you sort of alluded to before. So one of the things that I say all the time is, oh, I see. Yes. When someone's talking to me.
Right.
And the reason is because I literally see.
Exactly.
I do see. Yes, I see. When people say to you, do you see what I mean? Those are clairvoyant people. Right. Okay. Yep. So if you're saying, do you hear what I'm saying? Are you hearing what I'm saying?
Right.
One of the other things I say a lot is, does that make sense? Okay.
Yep.
So hear what I'm saying? That's a clairaudient person. Does that make sense? That's a claircognizant person.
Exactly.
Okay. Because they're really wondering if you have processed that enough to really get it all the way. Yep. Because that's how claircognizance people take in information. Yep. So understanding that is really helpful. And like I said, people are always telling you stuff about themselves without telling you. So if you just pay attention, you'll catch it. So like, look at the people around you for the rest of the day, whenever you're listening to this, or tomorrow, if you're listening to this at night, and go, what are they saying about what their strongest clairs are?
They might even say like, I'm not feeling this.
Yes.
Feeling.
Yes, exactly. Clairsentience.
Right.
Okay. So then the other thing is, I sort of alluded to this with my math example, is whatever your learning challenges are, you'll see an absence of the top two clairs in how you do those things.
Yep.
Okay. So like I said, math, some people can visualize math. Mm-hmm. Okay. But for most of us who don't have that kind of a savant brain, that's very difficult. That has to be worked out physically.
On paper.
Okay.
Right.
So if you are clairvoyant and you don't bring a lot of visualization into math, then math is going to be more difficult for you.
Exactly.
Okay. If reading is very difficult for you, then there's a chance that clairvoyance is not in your top two, because reading is like literally hallucinating to an old tree, right?
Yep.
Like you're literally hallucinating images.
Right.
Okay. And there's this trend on TikTok too that is like, do you know some people picture stuff when they talk, and then people like, you don't picture anything when someone, and it's just really funny to me because they're just describing the different clairs. Right. So there's nothing wrong with you if that's hard. It's just not as much developed in you.
Exactly.
Because it's not one of your defaults.
Right.
Okay. If you see somebody when they're trying to think hard, or there's some sort of challenge in front of them, if you see them close their eyes, they are a clairvoyant person.
Yep.
Because the other thing that we do is like, we sort of like glaze over our eyes and stop using them. I had to learn how to do that when I was doing sessions, because it's really awkward to close your eyes when someone's talking to you.
Right.
But I would be
sort
like,
of look off in the distance.
Yeah. I just sort of like unfocus my eyes and do this. But the reason is that we're trying to stop the outside eyes so we can focus more on what the screen inside our brain is like showing us.
Yep.
So if you see someone doing that, most likely that's a clue of clairvoyance.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I want to tell you all about how to strengthen clairvoyance. I've got some awesome tips.
Okay.
But I think we should take a quick break first, and we'll be right back.
All right, Heather, the day is here. The moment is here.
I know what you're going to say.
We've been talking about it. I've been teasing it and making you tease it.
Yeah.
But your sessions are here.
They're here.
And they're booked.
They sold out.
They sold out. I told you.
It's really funny.
I told you all, and I told you.
Yeah. It's really funny to be aware of your own ego and to have a friend who's very aware of your own ego, because it's like, I believed you when you were telling me what all the things that happened that you said would happen. Right. But like my ego was like, okay, but we're also going to be really
ready.
Really like sure that no one is going to care to do this at the same time.
It's insane.
It is insane. But anyways, I'm going to put on the website, which is linked on Instagram, and it's also on our website.
It's on our website. It's in our Instagram profile. It's in our bio.
You can find it. But if you go to the IGG website, intuitivegirlsguide.com, it's under more. I'm going to just put like a little wait list in. So whoever signs up for that, I'll just, when I open up the next set, you can have first dibs. So you can still go and do that if you want.
And this is only on like the people who saw it on Instagram, which we don't have nearly as many followers as we have listeners.
Right.
So like if you're feeling like, oh shit, I missed it.
Yeah.
Follow us on Instagram so that you're seeing this stuff, because it came out there.
And our
first.
Instagram is so cute.
It's super cute. So it came out there, and then we put it on the website, and now it's here, and now everyone's going to hear it.
Yeah.
So if you've ever wanted a session with Heather, and I know you all have, because I get the DMs and I get the emails, I know you want a session. I've had to turn you all down. Now's the chance.
Thank you for wanting sessions. Like, that's really nice. Not? I mean,
it's ridiculous.
I appreciate it. But I do think it's really interesting. And I wrote a blog post a little bit about like the process of it for me. And it's like, it's really interesting when you follow your intuition. I think sometimes when we tell people like, just follow your intuition, they're picturing that like it's a real easy process.
Or like very obvious.
Yeah. Or like I think sometimes when people think of me, and I feel like this is true for you as well, because they picture us as being very intuitive. I just said picture us because I'm clairvoyant, because I picture everything. When they picture us, they think like it's just very easy to follow your intuition. Correct. And our intuitions are very, very loud, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Like, this was messy for me. This was
hard. I had to kick your ass on this.
You gave me I had a deadline. I was like, I need you to tell me by this deadline that like I put it out when I did it 2 days after the deadline. Like, it's so funny, but I just feel like it's important to say that, because there's so many times when people really represent themselves as intuitive, as like better than everyone, or they don't have certain problems, or like the chosen one to download information. I hate that so much. And it's not true. Super intuitive people also have super developed egos.
Correct.
So they're also super afraid.
Yeah. And it's just proof of what we always say, or what I so like not super politely say, is like, you can't see your own shit.
No, you can't.
Like, no matter how much you work on it, or how much you do the work, or you talk about it with your friends, like when you're in that moment and your ego is feeling activated, like it's hard to see it when it's your own shit.
That's why you need people.
Right. So that's why I was like, no, we're not. This is a sure shot. Like, I know exactly how this is going to go.
Yeah.
I know, because that's my Claire.
Right.
I knew exactly how this was going to go.
And you were exactly right.
Because it wasn't my shit.
Because you could easily see it.
Right. It's not mine.
Right. But it's also just like a great reminder that like, that's why we all need each other.
Right.
And again, why I don't like when people act like there should be one top person.
Right.
Like
there's a hierarchy.
I'm picturing, we watched the Mother God docuseries.
Yes. What's it called? Something about love. Love wins, or
I don't remember.
It's like Love Will Win or something like that. It's on Hulu.
I'm so traumatized by it.
It was fucking shocking.
I made you watch it.
And that's saying a lot for us, who like we are obsessed with cults. And all this stuff. Like this was beyond.
And it's not one that will leave you with like a lot of hope at the end, because most of the people are still kind of like in it, even though, spoiler alert, the lady dies. Don't worry, in the first 2 seconds you know that.
You'll know about it.
Yeah, I jump scared Jamie.
It's awesome.
Yeah. But
oh my God, it's awful.
When someone is centering themselves like that as like the all-knowing,
exactly,
it's such bullshit. It's such bullshit.
Anytime there's a hierarchy like that, like it doesn't make sense.
No, don't listen to it.
Yeah.
And if your intuition is telling you to do something and you're also like really afraid, and like your ego's telling you it's not going to go well, it's okay to do it that way. Like, you don't have to show up like 100% sure. Like, I know do it scared's a little cheesy, but like,
true, that's
really how you have to do everything.
I mean, if you're like super scared of something, it's usually a good indicator that you're supposed to do it. It's not something that's like going to physically harm you.
Right.
But like this, like when you're scared of something,
that's
usually a sign that your ego's highly engaged. And that means that like there's something you need to look at.
Yeah.
And it's probably something you should be doing, but you just need to calm the system.
Yeah. And your intuition doesn't just lead you to shit to fill your desires. It also leads you to shit to conquer some fears.
And grow.
And grow. Exactly.
And that's scary.
Yeah.
Oftentimes.
Yeah. And it's not always a fun ride.
No.
But I'm just saying, follow it and show up messy. Like, you don't have to look, you don't have to, cruise in 100% sure looking great. No. Like, intuition is like wild and weird and messy.
Right. Messy.
And like, that's okay to be.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right. Go book a session.
All right, Jay, let's talk about strengthening your clairvoyance.
Okay.
Now, again, I'm going to keep repeating it. Don't just work on strengthening your clairvoyance if you're super clairvoyant. Work on strengthening it even if you're not, because that's going to benefit everything. And like I said, there's so many times when using one of your like non-top 2 clairs is really beneficial.
Yeah.
You got to confirm shit sometimes.
Definitely.
You got to sidestep your ego sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or sometimes you're so used to that. Like sometimes I think your body's so used to your clairvoyance or your clair, whatever yours is. Like sometimes I feel like my intuition will sort of kick me in the ass a little bit with a different clair.
That's a really good point.
Like if I'm being wishy-washy or something or not, or if I'm like, no, that's not it. And then I'll like get a smell. And I'm like, oh shit, it is that. Like, it's like my self is being like, hey, dummy, like, why aren't you listening? Also, so they send it to me through a different route.
So such a smart point, because even your nervous system reacts differently to the clairs than your quote unquote normal ones.
Yes.
So you really do have a different reaction.
Yes.
It filters different and you feel it different.
Right.
I think that's a really good point. Okay. My first strengthening thing for you to do is this is going to sound a little bit silly, but I really do enjoy stuff that requires randomness. So like a random word generator, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, because, you love that.
Yeah, like you can just use that. And for me, it's very hard to pull stuff out of thin air. I know you've witnessed this happen to me a lot of times where I'm trying to pull like a random example or a random word.
It's never random.
And someone in the room's like, that's exactly what happened to me. Exactly. Shit. Like I can't tell the difference between random and something I grabbed in the room.
Yep.
I don't think I do random. I think it's just always something I grabbed in the room. But if you use something like a random word generator, you take out the guessy part of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want you to use that. You literally can Google random word generator. It might even be randomwordgenerator.com.
Probably.
I don't know. But you just go on there and you just grab a couple words. Okay. I grabbed 3 for you to do this exercise with. I'll tell you what they are in a second. You'll also laugh at the ones that came up, I think. So what you're going to do is when you hear a word, I'm going to tell you a word in a second, you're going to conjure an image in your mind connected to the word.
Okay.
Okay. So if your clairvoyance is in your top 2, this is easy. You're like, that's just going to happen when you say the word naturally.
Right.
If it's not, you're going to have to put some effort into it.
Right.
All right. But what I want you to also notice is that you're going to start judging the image and your ego is going to ask you to change the image. And like, there's going to be this whole process that happens.
Right.
You want to just observe what happens.
Right.
The more you can just observe and let an image happen, the better.
Yep.
Because if you were to ever do like a reading or a session or anything, even like you were to do anything intuitive, energy work on someone, right? If you are letting something come in visually and then you let yourself judge it and shift it, you're murky. You're making it murky what you're trying to give to the person.
Yeah, you're changing it.
Yeah. So you want that raw version to be the one that gets spoken or given to the other person. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So the more you can practice like letting yourself, you're not going to shut off the ego stuff, trying to change it, but it can just be over to the side, running at the same time as what you're creating. That's the goal. Okay. So here are the words that I want you to do. This was random word generator. I just hit it 3 times. Okay. The first one that came up was rainbow.
Really?
Yes.
I find that hard to believe. I believe you, but it's weird.
I agree. So you just conjure an image of a rainbow. And the thing is, also do this again tomorrow.
Right.
Also do it again and think of somebody you care about.
Yep.
Connect it to a person. Just watch the image be different.
Yep.
The image is not what a rainbow represents to you. The image is what happened when you asked your clairvoyance to get information of how rainbow connects to you right now.
Good point. Good point.
Now the voice going beside you that's judging it, just keep a little ear for anything very interesting.
Gotcha.
Okay. Because that's just going to give you information about your own self. All right. So again, you can do this and like, I wonder if I pictured rainbow and then I pictured Jamie. That's going to conjure a very different image than if I picture rainbow and I picture myself. Okay.
Yeah.
They're different versions of something. And that's because they're representing different energy that I'm picking up.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Word 2 is estate.
Really? Oh.
Okay.
Interesting.
Word 3 is delicate.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Random word generator, 1, 2, 3. Those are the words that came up. If you would like to tell me what you think that means for me, go ahead. I have an idea.
What did you see when you pictured delicate?
I saw like lace doilies, and then I saw like kind of like an ink blot test when it like folds in and out of each other.
Cool. Okay.
What did you see when I said delicate?
Like a Taylor Swift album.
Oh, because it's a song,
Yeah.
Delicate. So I think your clairaudience popped in
exactly.
a little.
I think it did too.
Interesting. That's all you need to do. Interesting.
Exactly.
We talked about that word.
Exactly.
Interesting. That's it. You're just observing what happened.
Correct.
There's going to be some times where you do it and you're like, wow, there's nothing here.
Yeah.
Not much triggers on that one.
Yep.
Let's try something else.
Mm-hmm.
Or let me try again later. Or let me drink some water first. Like it's fine.
Right.
It's not a judgment thing.
Yep.
The more strengthened and developed this clair is, the easier this is. And the harder this is. So just try it.
And don't you think that if you're someone who's working as a medium, I'm just going to ask for this point of clarity because I think I can kind of like hear it coming in.
Okay.
Like via emails.
Your claircognizance has already read the emails.
I think that when you're doing actual mediumship, right?
Yeah.
You start to create like symbols.
Yes.
So like a rainbow would mean for me this. Yes. I know you've done that to me before.
Yep.
But you have to be open.
Yep.
So like I'm seeing a rainbow and it usually means this, but what does it mean to you?
Yep.
So like I think it's important to know that you can tap in, you can connect to that energy, but it might not be the exact path to the right quote unquote answer or the right message. Such
a good point, because you can't apply right or wrong to intuition. Right. It won't ever make sense. And you're going to want to, because you're not going to want to say something and put yourself out on a limb
and look wrong.
Right. You want to make sure that you're right. So it makes sense that would happen.
Right.
But also, the more you do this with imagery, and I'm going to give you an example in the next exercise of that, the more you see repetitive things.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So just as a random example, I don't do mediumship stuff, but I do use my clairvoyance like literally when I talk to anyone, but especially if I'm helping someone through something.
Yeah.
Right. If I see an anchor while you're talking, that just means there's a vow that I need to explore.
Oh,
it doesn't mean it doesn't happen every time there's a vow. That would just be anchors constantly, right? But it's like, go there. It's like an anchor. All of a sudden it pops up.
Because it's holding the person.
Yeah, because there's something energetically that's still tied back to somewhere. And that's just what I have picked.
Gotcha.
I didn't consciously pick it.
Right.
It's just sort of like, oh, that's what that means to me, right? I think that's a claircognizance thing. Like it just got assigned somewhere.
Yep.
So if I see an anchor, it's going to mean something very different than if you see an anchor. Or if you might assign anchor to mean something that's like bad, I assign it to mean something that's interesting and good and like explore. Like,
right.
So if somebody said to me like, oh, they're doing a reading to me and they said, I'm seeing an anchor. Are you feeling really dragged down? That's not what you want to do when you're giving someone a symbol, because anchor doesn't mean that to
you.
It just means that to you.
Exactly.
So it's sort of like what you're saying, like, well, I'm seeing this. Tell me what that means to you. That's what an intuitive person does.
Exactly.
This is what I represented as. What do you?
Right. And if you're feeling like you have to like get it right, or you have to nail it every time, and so that your ego's too far engaged in the process.
Yes, which I get.
Agreed.
It's a tough thing to do, but if you do sessions with people, and I think this is true for energy workers, any kind of healer, anybody who does any kind of reading, or I would even say like therapists.
Yep.
There's a lot of times where you say something to someone and they like, I don't know what that
means. It doesn't hit, right?
Yeah. And then the next day there's an email in your inbox.
Yep.
And it's like, oh my God, I figured out what that meant. Because the state that you have to be in when you're receiving all this information, it's overwhelming. It's hard to get everything. Yeah. You could be on a track that's not the right one.
Yep.
So if you really judge that too much, you're going to get frozen. So it really is about just like giving it and letting it do what it needs to do.
Right.
Maybe they'll understand it. Maybe they never will.
Right.
I mean, I actually had a symbol that kept popping up over and over and over again. It still does for your husband. And we've never figured out what it meant.
We haven't.
We have no idea. Yep. Does it mean that it's wrong? No, we just all haven't connected the dots on it. Right. Like that happens. It's part of it.
Yep. I think that's why when I do, like, I'm speaking to a medium, I prefer to more of like a conversation.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm not going to stonewall a medium and be like, you tell me what the anchor means. Like, because that's not how that works. Then you're quizzing them.
Yes, and all you're going to get is like tiny little nuggets of information. You're not Listen, a really good medium is going to stop you if you start giving them too much information because they actually don't want it.
Right.
Like
it's calling too much in.
It's going to make it hard to see what is you're getting and what someone's telling you and how influenced that is, and it's too much. So a good medium is going to stop you and not try to get that out of you, but they are going to ask you questions. They are going to say, does this make sense to you? Like, do you understand why I would see this or who this could be? They're not going to be like, so this is your 3 times great grandmother on your uncle's side. Like that's not how that goes. That's not what it looks like. Yeah. Okay. So tap into that and try this second exercise. Okay. So I want you to just think about a person that you care about. Mm-hmm. Okay. Write their name down if that works better for you, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I want you to let an image come into your mind that represents that person. Okay. Uh-huh. Then get more specific and say, let me tap into their energy right now and see what image comes to mind, or overlay that on the image I have. Okay. And just see what comes, and don't judge it, and don't even try to solve it. Right. There are so many times where I'll be heading into, like, usually when I'm meeting someone for the first time, because otherwise I probably understand the symbol. And I've got this like symbol or this picture that keeps coming up. I have no idea what it means. Right. But 20 minutes into the conversation, I'm like, oh, that's why I was seeing that. Right. It's not always to solve. It's just like, hey, little heads up. This is what you're picking up. That's it.
What do you suggest people do if they're trying this exercise and their ego blocks them and they can't pull any visual up?
Yeah. So I would say try it with a clair that you're comfortable with. Okay. If you're more comfortable like hearing, if you're more comfortable just like knowing or getting a feeling in your body or any of that, go do that and then come back to it, because you just need to get your ego to know it's safe to do this. Right. If you're really having like a strong reaction to not doing it, then I would say see someone who can help you with whatever vow you have about it not being safe. Gotcha. Okay. Ask yourself the question, like, why isn't this safe? Right. A very common thing with clairvoyant people who are really afraid to tap into their clairvoyance is a story you and I hear all the time, which is when I was a kid, I saw this person and I 2 seconds later or 10 minutes later learned that they had died.
Oh, right.
Okay. Yes. Yep. So then they're like, oh my God, that was so scary and traumatizing, which makes sense. It is scary. In our culture, that would be a very scary thing to happen. So it's like there's something connected where like there's some feeling of guilt as a kid that maybe you did something wrong and that's why they died,
or didn't stop it.
You didn't stop it. Right. There's all kinds of stuff that we attach. Yeah. So if it's really, really strong, then talk to someone about it, see if you can get to the bottom of why. Yeah. But don't force yourself if it feels terrible. No. Never do that. No. If it feels uncomfortable and a little scary, absolutely force yourself. Right. But know where that line is of like, if you start to feel a lot of anxiety or like you're going to have a panic attack, absolutely stop. Right. It's not worth it. Yep. Use the other clairs. Exactly. Until you can figure out why. Yep. Okay. If you're having trouble, even if it's not like super fear-based, it's just like a tougher clair for you, use curiosity. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you ask yourself a question, or, we talk about how words are spells, and it's really important the words you're using. When you want to get yourself out of a fear-based place and into an intuitive place, you want to say like a curious question. So think something like, I'm curious what image would come to mind for that person.
That's a great point.
And like, let yourself feel curious. Yep. You're going to kind of sidestep your ego on that, because your intuition loves curiosity. Right. In fact, the thing that makes people not have great boundaries with intuition is curiosity. If you're a super curious person like me, it's very difficult to be, because like, I don't want to wall that off because I want to see what that's about over there.
Right. But it also takes the pressure off if you're the person like I am, where like, if I'm not immediately doing it, then my ego is like, you suck at this. You can't do this. Like, why is this so hard? But if you frame it as like, oh, I wonder what this is, just not like curious. Do this now.
Yes, or or like I need to get the correct image for that person. When you're like, I'm curious what would come up.
It's a different energy.
You pull yourself out of right and wrong, and you're just sort of sit as an observer. Right. It's sort of like going into a movie and being like, I'm really curious what this movie's about, instead of going in with a lot of expectation. It just sort of sets you into a different place.
Yeah, it definitely takes the pressure off.
Yeah, so use that life hack. Even if like you're feeling in a high pressure situation and you're like, I'm curious what would happen if I just went up and said what I needed.
It's a great one.
it's going to be easier to do it because then your intuition is going to activate.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
So when you have problems or challenges, try getting a picture that will help you through it. So like I sort of said with my like anchor example, if I need to go into another state, for example, like I need to be more like on, okay, or I need to shift out of that, I'm just going to picture an image, and I have them that shift me into different ones. They're very color based, whatever. Okay. Clairvoyant people do that naturally. So if that's not something that you kind of default to, if you're trying to get yourself into, like you're about to walk into a job interview and you're nervous, but you need to be calm, cool, collected, and confident, you're just picture an image that you've assigned to all those things, and conjure it and just hold it in your mind and then move towards the thing. It's going to make a big difference because you're going to kind of go around your ego. Right. You don't have to answer to anything that your ego says if you're just picturing something.
Yeah, and you're calling that energy in.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, even if that's not your top Claire and it's hard to conjure an image in your mind, what's going to happen while you're attempting to is the exact thing you want. Right. Does that make sense? You don't have to get the perfect image. Exactly. It's the attempt. Okay. Again, there's no right or wrong when it comes to what you see or what you get from any of your clairs. Exactly. It's just what comes in, and it's just interesting.
Yeah, it's just data. Yep.
Okay. If you naturally do clairvoyance, you're going to have sort of like a question in your mind a lot. So if you don't naturally do this, I'm going to ask you to ask yourself this question. Okay. So the question that clairvoyant people have in their mind all the time is, why am I picturing this in connection to this? Okay. That thought doesn't even come in words for me. It's just as soon as I picture it, I'm like, why is that connected to that? Okay. So if clairvoyance is not one of your top two, or you don't find yourself contemplating that, again, that's curiosity based. Just ask yourself, like, why do I picture this every time? Even if you don't, like, why would I want this picture connected to this? What does this picture do for me? Right. That's going to help activate the great parts of clairvoyance. Yep. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay. The last exercise I have for you has to do with dreams. Okay. Okay. Another way to know if you're clairvoyant is you probably remember more of your dreams. You might not wake up and be able to tell people about it, but you remember dreaming. Yes, it's very vivid, the experience for you if you're clairvoyant. If you're not, if that's not one of your top two, it's not going to be as vivid. You're not going to remember as much. You're going to have little parts. I mean, I can always tell how someone describes a dream, which their top are, because people are like, oh, it's so weird. It's always so loud, or it's always so quiet, or it was really cool, this noise I was hearing. Like, I would never say that about a dream because that's not what's going to stick out, because clairaudience is not one of my top two. But I will tell you visually what I saw and who I saw, and like the detail of what I'm describing has to do with imagery. That is another clue. Yep. Okay. So what you can do, again, clairvoyant top two or not, is I want you to set an intention and say, when I wake up, I want to remember one still image or one symbol from my dream. Just one. Right. That's it. Yeah. Okay. And when that starts to work, then say two. Say more. Then say three. Go as far as you'd like to go. Yep. Okay. Or you can even do a thing where I'm going to remember one image, and then I want to get an image that will help me clarify what that means. Okay. Okay. So you can take it a step further, but you're just calling that in, because people who are naturally very clairvoyant wake up with like a symbol or picture or a scene stuck in their head. Yes. Okay. So you're trying to call that into yourself. Gotcha. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay. The last thing I want to just talk about with this is something I alluded to before, that like, what things that happen in your childhood trauma, or even just events where you were fearful and your ego was really active, are going to alter the way you use your clairs. Yeah, that's me. That's Jamie, but it's also a lot of people. Yeah. Okay. So you could have a default to clairaudience, but have been really fearful or afraid when you heard something. Okay. And it doesn't have to be this huge, gigantic trauma that happens. It could have been something small. Yeah. And you associated the fact that you clairaudient heard something with the bad thing. Right. Okay. So what was really happening was that you picked up something in a situation where your intuition heightened because it needed to get you information.
Right.
All right. The interpretation of that information is hard. And when you are being raised in a society that does not talk about intuition, that teaches you that the things you desire are bad and sinful and scary,
right.
And makes it out of control for you, and you're going to, burn in a really hot place with ragged clothing for eternity if you follow them, it makes sense that you're going to have some shit attached to these.
Yeah, or even if you're just like everyone else around you has theirs turned off too. So like, so there's no information coming at you like this is normal or this is what this means. It doesn't even feel like it's something you can talk about.
No. So you don't have like people say, why is that so scary? And the reason is that back in the day, all of our time when we finished working was spent sitting around a fire talking about all of this shit.
Right.
That's what we were doing.
Right.
All of the holidays, Sabbaths were based on tapping into all of these things. So you're just being raised now without the proper information.
Right.
So there's this huge...
But still the abilities.
Yes.
Right.
There's this huge gap in that being passed on.
Right.
So that's why we have so many fear-based things around them.
Right.
It makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So
the thing is just, again, be an observer of that. Find it interesting, like what's there, and then work through it with somebody qualified, please. But like where you're really like unpacking it, and stop judging yourself so hard for it.
Right.
To me, it's a red flag if someone's like, I am not intuitive at all. I can never get anything. And it's a red flag in the sense of like, you have some trauma going on.
That was me.
Yes.
That was me. I was like, I'm not intuitive.
Yes.
I cannot do any of this.
Yes. Because people who actually aren't intuitive don't
care.
Know that they aren't intuitive.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct.
If you're saying, I'm not intuitive, I can't get any information, you're literally telling me that you know there's information right there to get, and you're having trouble getting it into your system. It's literally what you are saying.
Right.
Okay? I know people who, again, it's a spectrum. On that spectrum are dialed very, very low on intuition.
Right.
Okay? They're in my life. They are a little afraid of me usually, to be honest.
Generally, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
They are never once have they said to me, I'm not really intuitive. Because they don't even know what that feels like in their body.
Yeah. It's not even in the like scope of possibilities for them.
No, in fact, what they think is intuition is usually logical thinking. So like it's very, very confusing for them.
Right.
So those people don't come up to me and say that.
Right.
Now, sometimes their spouses come up and say it about them, but those people don't initiate that, nor do they phrase it that way.
Right.
They say stuff like, how do I know what that is?
Yep.
Right. Like that's more of the line. So if you've ever said, I just can't get that information in, you're probably very intuitive.
Exactly. And you can feel that you want it to come in.
There's just something resisting. Something's too scary for you to let it in, and you can work through that.
Right.
It's also okay and allowed.
Yeah. And if it's not coming in the way you like quote unquote want it to, like I thought I had to be clairvoyant. I thought that was the only choice, and then I realized, how claircognizant I was.
Yeah.
And then once I started embracing that, then my clairvoyance started coming in around it. And then I started hearing myself talking about like what I see and seeing. And it wasn't seeing dead people, and it wasn't that, but it was different. But like once you start warming up one of them, like if you're at the point where like you feel like it's all turned off, once you start warming up one, the other one's going to come, and then the next and the next. And that's why it's good to work on all of these.
Absolutely. And in different situations, you need to lean on different ones.
Right.
Okay. Listen, clairgustance and clairalience, which are clear tasting and clear smelling, those are not super strong in me. They're not usually people's top two.
Not generally, no.
Okay. They can be, but that's not super typical.
Right.
But if I never worked on it and then had a moment where all of a sudden I could taste something,
right,
and then I would have no tools to work with that.
Right.
Nor would, if an opportunity came for that to be a thing, it wouldn't come in very easily because I wouldn't know what to do with it. So
be aware of
it's sort of like this weird thing where it's like, well, they're not really developed, so that's why it's not coming in that way. So you do need to work on all of them.
Yeah.
And just as an aside, not all intuition like not using your clairs, it isn't just developed in people who are like you doing that professionally.
Correct.
Like, have you ever heard a professional chef describe and talk about the meals he's created and why each taste follows another?
Mm-hmm.
That's somebody with incredibly developed clairgustance.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, is he using it to predict the future? No. But does he know or she know a lot more about how a taste experiences and what it means and like what it causes in someone to taste this before this followed by that?
Yep.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Right.
Because that's a very developed clair.
Right.
Okay. So
and they're using it whether they know it or not.
Yeah. And so do they probably give taste readings to people? No. But do they literally for a living help people experience things through taste?
It's pleasure. And,
yes. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Just listen to someone talk about that sometime and you'll really hear it. Have you ever heard a musician talk about the writing of like the literal music process? And you're going to tell me that that's not intuitive? Of course it is. Like you hear it when you sort of open up and like take yourself out of this idea that it has to look like mediumship or fortune telling.
Exactly.
I love mediumship. I'm cool with some fortune telling with an asterisk next to it. But like, if you take it outside of that, you're going to realize how intuitive everyone is and how it's always being used.
Intuition is everywhere. That's why we talk about it like this. That's why we don't spend a lot of time talking about mediumship. Right.
We have an episode on it. If you're curious, we love mediumship. I used to do it way back in the day. There's nothing wrong with it. But it's just
not how everyone's going to use intuition. So it doesn't apply to the masses.
Exactly.
And that's what we're here for, is to talk to everyday people about how it applies to their life. And we're not saying everyone should go out and become the next John Edwards.
No, I mean, you did send me
a
TikTok of Teresa Caputo.
She's the Long Island medium.
She's amazing.
She is.
Incredibly, incredibly talented. She just has wild hair.
Someone said that like, because her hair is like even bigger now than it used to be. And someone said that there's like a correlation to like her intuitive abilities. Like the bigger her hair is, the more tapped in she is.
Yes. You know what the thing I love about her and that whole thing is that like, that's how she feels good. That's what she likes.
Yeah. Who cares?
And how many times has she had to hear shit about how her hair looks?
Probably a million.
And she does it. That's what she wants to do. That's what she does because she's intuitive.
Yeah, exactly.
So I love that.
Same.
She's incredibly talented. There's so many incredibly talented people like that. And we're not saying don't try those things and don't go for those things. But you're using your intuition all the time. And if you're only thinking of it along that like vein, you're missing out.
Exactly.
You're really missing out.
You are.
Do you know what my intuition is telling me right now?
To get coffee.
We should take our matching sweaters and go get some coffee.
Okay.
All right.